Jesus reveals the hidden reason why your anxiety never goes away. Have you ever wondered why your anxiety never goes away? Even after so many prayers, so much advice, so many promises that it will pass? What if I told you that there is something hidden, silent, but extremely powerful, that is fueling this suffering within you day after day? A spiritual truth that almost no one sees, but that Jesus reveals to you now. Imagine waking up every day with your heart racing, even for no apparent reason, feeling as if you were trapped inside your own body, trying to breathe in the middle of an invisible sea that no one sees, smiling on the outside, but on the inside, begging for relief. You try to trust, you try to believe, you try to rest, but something inside you just can't. And do you know the most painful thing? That's when this anxiety starts to make you doubt yourself, doubt your faith, doubt even if God is still listening. And then comes that suffocated question that almost no one has the courage to say out loud, if God is with me, why do I still feel this way? Take a deep breath, because this question today will find an answer, not a common answer, not a generic explanation that just says, pray more or have faith. What you are about to hear is a profound revelation, something that goes straight to the spiritual root of what is afflicting you, a key that can unlock what has been imprisoning you inside for so long. Most people never realize this, but today they will, because Jesus reveals to you something that was ignored by many, but not anymore. This message is unlike anything you have ever heard, because she doesn't just understand your pain, she walks with you inside her. It leads you to the place where fear loses its strength and faith breathes again, where anxiety no longer has dominance, and it all starts with a choice. Open your heart to listen, not with the ears, but with the soul. This is not just an introduction. It is a sacred invitation, a moment between you and God. And if you are here, it is because He brought you. It wasn't by chance. It wasn't a random click. It was purpose. Jesus reveals to you now what you needed for so long, the truth that can finally set you free. Take a deep breath and open your heart to this message. You're not here by chance. Jesus brought you to this video for a reason that you may not yet fully understand, but is about to be revealed. There is something sacred happening right now. And if you stay here, you'll realize that it's not just another piece of content. It's a calling, a spiritual encounter, an answer that your soul has been seeking for a long time. Get ready, because God may speak directly to you today in a way you have never experienced before. Jesus reveals to you something so profound, so necessary, that perhaps it will forever transform the way you see your anxiety and your faith. If this message is touching your heart, tell us in the comments, I trust in Jesus. Your testimony could be the encouragement someone needs today. You have no idea how much a comment can spark hope in the hearts of those who are almost giving up. And if you believe that this word needs to reach more people, press the like button, because your click could be an instrument of healing and liberation for another soul suffering in silence. This is the beauty of the gospel. When you share faith, hope, and comfort, you become part of someone's miracle. And if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, do so now. Not only to not miss what comes next, but to walk together with a community that is being healed, restored, and strengthened day after day by the voice of Jesus. Jesus reveals something very important to you about this situation, and you need to hear it now. Imagine the scene. It's dark. The water hits the boat's hull hard. The wind blows violently, and each gust seems to rip hope from your chest. Fear takes over. Panic sets in. Men who have faced many storms now tremble, like children. In the middle of the sea, in the middle of the night, in the middle of chaos, something happens. A figure approaches over the water. It's not possible. It's impossible. The heart accelerates, the eyes widen. It's a ghost, someone shouts. But then a voice tears through the wind with sweetness and authority. Courage, it's me, don't be afraid. It was Jesus, there, in the eye of the hurricane, walking on what threatened to sink them. And at that moment, something even more impressive happens. Peter, yes, impulsive Peter, takes courage and says, Lord, if it is you, "Send me to meet you on the water." And Jesus just says, "Come." And Pedro goes. He steps out of the boat, 1 foot at a time. The sea is rough, but it moves forward, eyes fixed on Jesus. Faith, for a moment, overcomes logic, overcomes fear, overcomes physics. Peter walks on the water. Something supernatural is happening. But then he gets distracted. Look around, the wind is strong. The waves are big. The noise deafens, and he disconnects. His eyes are no longer on Jesus, but on the storm. And that's when it starts to sink. Despair. Water entering the nostrils. Arms trying to grab nothing. A choked cry. "Lord, save me." And immediately, yes, immediately, Jesus reaches out his hand, takes hold of Peter, and says, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Matthew 14:31. This story is more than a miracle. It's a mirror. How many times have you started walking with faith, feeling strong, believing that you would win, until something diverted your focus? How many times have you tried to control everything, your emotions, your future, the people around you, and ended up wallowing in anxiety? The truth is that Jesus reveals to you that the root of many anxieties is a silent need for control. You try to predict what will happen. You try to protect yourself from every pain, every disappointment, every what if. But what you don't realize is that this desire for control doesn't bring security. It brings more fear, more anguish, because the soul was never made to carry what only God can sustain. And what no one tells you is this: as long as you insist on controlling the uncontrollable, anxiety will continue to dominate you. You sink not because you are weak, but because you're looking in the wrong place. When Peter focused on Jesus, he walked the impossible. When he looked away, he was swallowed by chaos. And that is the hidden key. Anxiety persists because you have your eyes on the wind and not on the master. And do you know the most painful thing? It's just that we often don't even realize it. We think we are being responsible, forewarned, careful. But in reality, we are being dominated by an illusion of control that keeps us in constant tension. Do you feel like you need to figure everything out on your own? That cannot fail? That you can't rest? That you need to have all the answers, make all the decisions, save everyone? Maybe that's why your mind won't stop. Maybe that's why, even though you pray, you remain restless. Because you pray, but you don't deliver. You cry out, but you don't let go. You ask for help, but keep holding the reins tightly. Jesus reveals to you that faith is not being sure of tomorrow. It's trusting even without seeing it. It's resting even without understanding. It's walking with your eyes on Him and not on what scares you. Perhaps today is the time to do what Peter did. Shout with a torn heart, with an exposed soul, without pride or pose. "Lord, save me," and you will discover that He has always been there, that He never turned away, that His hand is still outstretched, waiting for you to stop fighting alone and allow yourself to be held. And you know, when Jesus gets into the boat, the wind stops, not because the sea calms down first, but because His presence transforms chaos into calm. Close your eyes now, take a deep breath, and imagine this scene. You, in the middle of the storm, and Jesus walking over everything that scares you. He comes towards you. He doesn't wait for you to come to Him. He comes to you. And when you stop fighting to control everything and simply hold His hand, the peace that passes all understanding begins to invade your inner being. Jesus reveals to you that the secret is not having the strength to handle the world. It's having faith to release the world into His hand. If this word spoke deeply to you, comment now. Jesus is my anchor. Your testimony could be the comfort someone needs right now. Sometimes a simple sentence in the comments is like a hug for someone who is broken inside. And if this message touched your heart, press the like button so that others can also be blessed. Yes, your like can be an instrument of God to reach those who today feel they have no way out, but something more powerful is about to be revealed. There is a hidden pain behind many anxious hearts, a silent but devastating pain. And what you're about to discover will change the way you see everything. Get ready, because Jesus reveals to you what few have had the courage to face until today. God's silence is not always absence. Sometimes it's proof. Sometimes it's pregnancy. Sometimes it's healing. Anna knew what it was like to pray with tears. I knew what it was like to enter the presence of God and pour out my soul, not with beautiful words, but with groans that seemed to have no end. Anna was sterile, and in a culture where a woman's value was directly tied to motherhood, this was an unbearable burden. She carried within her a silent pain, a hidden shame, a wound exposed daily by the looks and provocations of Penina, her husband's other wife, who had children and made a point of reminding her of this at every moment. Year after year, Anna went up to the temple with the same pain, the same emptiness, the same unanswered cry. But there was a day, a different day. She couldn't bear to keep it any longer. She could no longer pretend that everything was fine. Then he entered the temple and wept bitterly. The text says, "She, with bitterness of soul, prayed to the Lord and wept a lot." 1 Samuel 1:10. She didn't say a memorized prayer. She didn't use fancy words. She just tore her heart out before God. So intense was her cry that the priest Eli thought she was drunk. But she answered, "No, my Lord, I am a woman of troubled spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord." 1 Samuel 1:15. And then something happened. Eli declared, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel will grant you what you asked." 1 Samuel 1:17. And here is the most important detail. The text says that after this prayer, she went her way, ate, and her face was no longer sad. 1 Samuel 1:18. Note, she had not yet received her son. Nothing had changed in the outside world, but something had changed inside her. Anna delivered. Anna trusted. And with that, the anxiety began to be overcome. Jesus reveals to you that anxiety often persists because you pray but don't give in. You talk to God, but you continue to carry the burden. You present your pain, but take it back at the end of the prayer. Relief does not come because prayer becomes just an emotional outlet, not an act of spiritual surrender. Anna teaches us that true relief begins when surrender is real, when we stop praying with an expectation of control and start praying with confidence in who God is, even if the result has not yet manifested itself. How many times have you left a prayer with your heart still heavy? Have you ever wondered why peace didn't come? Maybe because you didn't pray like Anna. Maybe because you asked, but didn't let go. Because you cried out, but still held the reins of the situation. Because you wanted an immediate response. And when it didn't come, you took it as silence or rejection. But Jesus reveals to you, faith is trusting even when everything still seems the same. Faith is following the path with a changed face, even before seeing the promise fulfilled. Perhaps your anxiety is being fueled by prayers that are nothing more than whispers. You complain, but you don't trust. You let off steam, but you don't rest. And that drains the soul. Because talking to God without giving it to Him is like asking for help and continuing to drown because you don't reach out. Anna shows us that the miracle begins within, when the soul calms down, when the countenance changes, when peace invades even in the midst of waiting. This story touches on wounds that many hide. How many are watching now and carrying an unfulfilled request for years? How many have prayed crying into their pillows, like Anna cried in the temple? How many have thought that God forgot? But Jesus reveals to you that He has not forgotten. He's listening, and more than that, He is working. But often, He waits for your faith to mature enough so that you not only desire the blessing, but trust in its timing. Because it's not about receiving, it's about trust. If this spoke to you, if this word found an echo in your soul, comment right now. I surrender everything to you, Lord. Because your comment could be the breath that someone in silence is looking for right now. And if you feel like you need to learn to truly trust God, share this video with someone who also needs to let go of the burden. Your surrender can generate liberation in another life. But there is an even more hidden, deeper, more silent pain, and one that has fueled anxiety in thousands of hearts: guilt. And what you're about to discover will change the way you see everything. Because Jesus reveals something to you that no one told you about this pain that you insist on carrying. Get ready. The cure you've been waiting for is closer than you think. The guilt. A silent weight that sickens inside, even when the outside world sees us smiling. It's that thought that insists on coming back when everything seems to be falling into place. The memory of a mistake you would like to erase. That regret that, despite prayers, continues to echo within you as if God hadn't yet heard, as if He was silent because of what you did. It's this guilt that fuels your anxiety, and you may never realize it. But Jesus reveals to you that there is a root hidden there, inside you, that needs to be uprooted by grace. And to do that, we need to revisit a story marked by the weight of guilt, but transformed by forgiveness. Imagine David, the king after God's own heart, a man admired, anointed, honored, but also a man who failed profoundly. He saw Bathsheba, desired, took, and to hide his sin, he plotted the death of Uriah, the husband of the woman with whom he committed adultery. That wasn't just a spur of the moment error. It was a series of decisions, each one darker than the last. And when it all came to a head, David broke down, inside. In Psalm 32, he reveals with brutal honesty, "While I kept silent, my bones grew old through my constant groaning all day long." Can you feel it? Guilt, silent, corroding the bones, taking away the life force, draining the soul. He further says, "Day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My mood became a drought of drought, an emotional pain that wouldn't go away, an inner void that no crown, no throne, no success could fill." This is exactly what happens to you when you hide what needs to be healed. When you try to move forward while ignoring the root of your guilt, the emotional weight turns into anxiety, and you even try to explain it with nice words. It's just stress. It's just tiredness. It's the busy routine. But deep down, there's something inside you that needs to be confessed. Anxiety increases because your soul is still holding on to what Jesus wants to release. And do you know what changed David's story? A simple gesture. Confession. He wrote, "I confessed my sin to you, and I have not hidden my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin." This is where everything changes. God's forgiveness does not come through perfection, arrive at the exhibition, by delivery, for the humility of recognizing, "Lord, I made a mistake. I need you." Maybe you've been stuck in this invisible cycle for years. Anxiety comes, you try to control it. Well, he asks, but he can't rest. Why? Because you still have guilt trapped in your soul, and she screams she won't rest until she is cured. But here is the revelation that Jesus reveals to you today. Guilt only has power while it remains hidden. When it is brought to the light of the cross, it loses its strength. The blood of Jesus does not partially cover it. It cleans completely. It doesn't matter how deep the mistake was, nor how long ago it was. What matters is the willingness of the heart to return and confess. Have you ever felt like David, trying to get on with your life while inside everything is falling apart? Have you ever felt like your prayer is empty because there is an invisible wall between you and God? And that wall is called guilt. Have you ever cried in secret, asking God for relief that never comes because you yourself have avoided touching the wound? So listen, what you hide, the enemy uses as a weapon against you. But what you give to God, He turns into testimony. This pain no longer needs to dominate you. This mistake no longer needs to define you. There is forgiveness. There is a cure. There is relief. But you need to surrender completely. Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep breath and imagine Jesus looking at you with eyes of mercy. He doesn't have stones in His hands. He has open arms. He does not call you by your error, but by your name. He does not define you by the fall, but by the cross. The healing begins now, not when you get better, but when you allow yourself to be touched by grace. If this message is touching your heart deeply, write in the comments with faith, "Jesus is greater than my fault." Your comment might be just what someone else needs to find the courage to come clean. Your pain will not be in vain. It can be the path to liberation for many, and if this message spoke to you, press the like button right now, because by doing this, you are helping other people find this relief too. It is an act of faith and compassion. But something even more powerful is about to be revealed. There is a silent reason that continues to fuel your anxiety, and it has to do with your wounded faith. Prepare your heart, because what comes next will change the way you understand your own spiritual battle. The sun burned mercilessly over the desert, while thousands of Israelites walked aimlessly, their feet cracking in the hot dust of the earth. There were no guarantees, no stored provisions, no comfort whatsoever. Only tomorrow, that abstract and distressing idea, seemed to occupy every thought. What if there is no food tomorrow? What if God doesn't show up? What if today is the last day He feeds us? Anxiety grew with each step, fueled by fear of a future that hadn't even arrived yet. It was then that something completely unexpected happened. At dawn, the ground was covered in a fine white substance, as if the sky had poured bread directly onto the earth. Manna, divine support, but with a clear instruction: don't save it for the next day. If they tried to store it, the food would rot. It was as if God Himself said, I will be here tomorrow too. But today, trust in the enough that I give you. Exodus 16-19-20. And this is where the pain that may be eating away at your heart right now begins, because the anxiety that consumes you every day does not come from the lack of response, but from the lack of trust in her time. Your mind is stuck in a constant what if. What if I lose my job? What if it doesn't work out with the one I love? What if I can't get out of this debt? And the problem is that you're trying to live the tomorrow when Jesus is trying to sustain you in the today. The result? An exhausted heart, a soul that never rests, a faith that runs out drop by drop because it is always trying to calculate the future that only God can see. Matthew 6:34 could not be more direct. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will bring its own worries. Each day is enough for its evil. Jesus reveals something profound to you here. Anxiety doesn't disappear because you're trying to live through days that don't even exist yet. It's like trying to breathe tomorrow's air with today's lungs. It does not give. God does not give you the strength of tomorrow because you are not there yet. His grace is released for the now. That's why peace flees, rest goes away, and the soul screams. You are fighting with weapons that have not yet been delivered, for battles that have not yet begun. But perhaps the question you need to ask is not, how do I solve what comes next? But, is Jesus not calling me to live just this moment with Him? Isn't the pain of your anxiety precisely because you want assurances, when the gospel has always been about trust? What if you were in the desert, like the Israelites? Would you keep the manna for fear of going hungry tomorrow? Or would you trust that the God who feeds today will continue to be faithful tomorrow? Because even though it may seem crazy, the manna spoiled when it was stored, but it fell again fresh the next day. Every day, as if God said, I will be here, always. This is one of those truths that disarms any justification. Because if you think about it, how many times has your anxiety dragged you into scenarios that never happened? How many sleepless nights because of problems that never even arrived? And even when they arrived, didn't God provide? Didn't support it? Didn't He take care of you? Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to live this moment with Jesus. Just this one. It's not about ignoring the future. It's about not allowing Him to steal your peace today. Because tomorrow doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. And He never fails. If this message touched your heart, tell us in the comments, Jesus, I trust in the today that you have given me. Your comment could be exactly the hope someone needs to find right now, but something even deeper is about to be revealed. Because sometimes the root of anxiety is not in the future, but in fear of not being enough to face it. And that is what we will confront in the next block. Get ready for a twist that will expose one of the cruelest lies anxiety has told you. Imagine the sound of a silent desert, a lonely man, his soul already marked by past failures, walks among dry bushes, fleeing for years from an Egypt that still haunts him. Moses had become just an ordinary shepherd, with his eyes downcast and his self-esteem destroyed. But there, in the middle of nowhere, a bush starts to burn, and the fire doesn't consume it. He approaches, confused, and hears a voice that paralyzes his soul. "Moses, I have a mission for you." His answer comes with the weight of all the traumas he carried in his chest. "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Exodus 3:11. This "who am I?" It wasn't an honest question. It was a scream of fear. Moses was not just doubting the mission, he was doubting himself. And perhaps you are in that exact same place right now, because one of the hidden reasons your anxiety never goes away is the chronic fear of not being enough. You feel like you are not prepared, that he's not smart enough, spiritual enough, strong enough, capable enough. And so, each new challenge becomes a cruel reminder that you will apparently never be good enough to win. But here's the twist that could reset everything. Jesus reveals you that your anxiety is not just born from what you face, but from the distorted lens through which you see yourself. Moses believed that God had made a mistake in choosing him. And you? Are you not doing the same? Could it be that, by focusing so much on your failures, you have not ignored the simplest and most powerful promise that God made at that moment? "I will be with you." It wasn't about Moses' ability. It was about the presence of God. And still, Moses resisted, stopped by an anxiety that was not born from the outside, but from within, from a heart shrunken by the fear of failing. And this is where many stumble, when they think they need to have all the answers, all the skills, all the strength before obeying. But Jesus reveals you what he wants from you is not perfection. It's surrender. Your yes is worth more than 1,000 justifications. Because when you say, "I'm not enough," God responds, "But I am." The great "I am" is with you. And that changes everything. That constant anxiety you feel, that knot in your chest before every important decision, that inner voice that screams, "You will fail again." It is fueled by a subtle but powerful lie, that you need to be ready for what God calls you to do. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if you only become who you need to be after you say yes? Moses only became the liberator when he accepted the call. Until then, he was just a man full of doubts. Stop now for a second. Close your eyes and imagine what God could do through you. If you would stop looking at what is missing and start trusting what he has already placed within you. Because the anxiety that paralyzes you may be rooted precisely in constant comparison with others, in the demand to be everything to everyone, in the perfectionism that makes you forget about grace. And that's the trap. The enemy does not need to destroy you. Just convince yourself that it will never be enough, and you sabotage yourself, silently, slowly, every day. But what are you about to understand will change the way you see everything. Because God didn't call Moses because he was capable. He called because he is faithful. And still today, he calls you, with all your flaws, insecurities, traumas, and weaknesses, because it is precisely there, in your limitation, that he reveals his power. What is a weight for you is a starting point for God. If this word spoke to your heart, comment, "Jesus. Even though I'm afraid, I say yes." Your comment could be the courage someone needs to stand up today. And here comes the most impressive part of this story, because sometimes the root of anxiety is not just the weakness we feel, but the fact that we try to carry everything alone. And what happens when even the strongest collapse? The answer is a twist that no one expects. Sometimes the biggest collapse happens right after the biggest win. Elijah had faced the impossible. Alone against 450 prophets of Baal, he called down fire from heaven, saw the altar being consumed by flames, and proved to the people that the Lord was the only true God. It was an epic, glorious moment, but it was also the last strand of strength he had left, because soon after, Jezebel threatens his life, and the one who once felt invincible runs, hide, ask to die. The image is too painful to ignore. A man of God, prostrate under a dry bush in the desert, murmuring in a choked voice, "Enough is enough, Lord. Take my life." 1 Kings 19:4. The same Elijah who defied kings and multitudes is now broken, exhausted, sunk in a darkness so dense that not even the air seems to come in properly anymore. And this is where Jesus reveals you something deep and disconcerting. Your anxiety may not come from weakness, but from an insistence on fighting alone, because the exhaustion you feel may not just be physical, it can be spiritual. The soul begins to scream when you take on burdens that God never asked you to carry. Anxiety becomes an alarm that you ignore until your body stops, until your heart collapses, until faith almost evaporates. Elijah was like that. And maybe you are too, trying to be strong for everyone, but without strength for yourself, helping everyone, but ignoring your own limits, praying for others, but forgetting to feed on the presence of God. And it is at that moment when the mind says it's over, that God approaches with something different. Care. He doesn't charge. Don't scold. He sends an angel with bread and water, a gentle touch, a silent presence that says, "Get up and eat, because the journey will be long." 1 Kings 19:7. Note, God does not eliminate the path. He offers sustenance to continue. And that's what you need to understand now. It's not about avoiding battles, but about not facing them without nourishing your soul. Take a deep breath, because this is a revelation that can break cycles of years inside you. You were not created to carry everything alone. Not even Elijah could do it. And have you been trying to be stronger than him? The world says, hang in there. Jesus says, rest in me. The world says, you have to handle everything. Jesus reveals to you, I am the bread, I am the water, I am the strength that you no longer have. How many nights have you cried into your pillow, not knowing how to continue? How many times have you dragged yourself to work trying to smile with your soul in ruins? How many times have you looked at the sky and thought, God, are you still with me? And even when silence was all you received, he was there, sending small miracles in the ordinary, forces between the lines, a warm bread in the form of a word, a sip of water in the form of presence. You're tired, I know, but you're not alone. And this is where your anxiety begins to lose power. When you stop pretending that you are invincible and allow yourself to be vulnerable before the only one who can restore you. Elijah only continued the journey because he ate, because it stopped, rested, and he listened. If this message reached you at the deepest point of your pain, write in the comments, Jesus, I need your support. Maybe your comment is the food someone desperate is looking for right now. If this message touched your heart, press the like button that can make this word reach someone who is on edge today. Your simple gesture can be a miracle in someone's life, but there's an even deeper truth that almost no one talks about. There's a commandment you ignore, and that's exactly why your anxiety never goes away. And what are you about to discover? It can change the way you see everything. Imagine a routine that never stops. The mind never turns off. The body wakes up tired. The heart is racing. Everything seems urgent. Everything demands something from you. Deadlines, demands, fears, results, expectations. When was the last time you really stopped? I'm not talking about vacations. I speak of real rest, one that restores not just the physical, but the soul. The truth that Jesus reveals you today, it is simple but forgotten. Anxiety often sets in because you have broken an essential spiritual principle, rest, atop Mount Sinai. As God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, there was one that seemed as practical as it was sacred. Remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Exodus 28. God wasn't just making a suggestion, it was an order. Resting is not optional, it is a commandment. And when we break spiritual commandments, symptoms appear in the body, in the mind, in the emotions. Today's neglected rest turns into tomorrow's chronic anxiety. It's like ignoring the red light on your car dashboard and continuing to drive until the engine stalls. And perhaps this is exactly your case. You run, solve, produce, work, help everyone except yourself. And deep down, you feel guilty about resting, as if stopping was weakness, as if breathing is a luxury you can't have. But what if I told you that this mentality, it's one of the biggest lies the enemy has planted to keep you exhausted? the creator of the universe himself, who does not get tired, who is all-powerful, worked 6 days and rested on the seventh. Not because I needed to, but because I was teaching. God modeled the rhythm of life, work and pause, production and contemplation, movement and silence. He knew that without this balance, the human soul would collapse, and he entered. Anxiety has become the emotional epidemic of the century, but no one connects this with the spiritual violation of rest. Jesus reveals you. It's not just about physically stopping. It's about trusting that even when you stop, he continues to care. When you rest, you are saying with your body, I know I'm not God. I know the world doesn't depend on me. Rest is an act of faith. Anxiety is often an act of disguised pride, because those who never rest in practice are saying, if I don't do it, no one else will. And that's too heavy to carry. Can you see now why your anxiety never goes away? Because you are stuck in a cycle of constant productivity, with no space to listen to God, no time to connect with yourself, no pause to heal what has been hurt within you. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you, just keep you too busy to notice that you're slowly getting sick, and that's why this message can be the turning point in your life. It's not just about taking 1 day a week to rest. It's about learning to live in rhythm for free, not out of despair. It's about turning off your mind to listen to the voice that whispers, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. Now take a deep breath. Feel this. You have permission to stop. You have the right to breathe without guilt. You have God's calling to live in peace. And when you obey the principle of rest, something supernatural happens. Anxiety loses its strength. The soul begins to reorganize itself. The body responds. The mind clears. And the heart beats again with hope. If this word touched your heart, write in the comments, Jesus, teach me to rest in you. Your comment could be the break someone desperate needed to find today. But something even more delicate is about to be revealed. Because there is a specific type of anxiety that is born not from tiredness, but from internal division. A divided heart never finds peace. And what are you about to hear? It can radically change the way you see what is destroying you inside. The scene begins with a noble gesture. A young man runs to Jesus, kneels at his feet, and asks with apparent sincerity, Good Master, what will I do to inherit eternal life? Mark 10:17. Everything indicates that there is someone really interested in the truth. He is neither indifferent nor rebellious. He wants an answer. He wants direction. But behind that reverent gesture, there was something that he himself still couldn't see, a divided heart. Jesus, who does not respond to appearances, looks directly at the soul. He lovingly exposes the root of the problem. Go, sell all that you have, give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come and follow me. Mark 10:21. And in that moment, everything changes. The young man is saddened, lowers his head, and leaves. Because he had many riches, or perhaps it was deeper, riches he possessed. This story carries a brutal truth that Jesus reveals you with clarity. The anxiety you feel may not be caused by the circumstances around you, but by the internal division between what you want and what you don't want to give up. The rich young man wanted to follow Jesus, but he also wanted to maintain his status, his financial security, his life plan. I wanted heaven, but I didn't want to lose earth. And that is the conflict that torments so many hearts today. We want peace, but without giving up what is holding us back. We want lightness, but we cling to what weighs us down. We want God, but we hesitate to trust completely. And the result? Anxiety, anguish, inner tiredness, because nothing is more exhausting than trying to live with a divided heart. One part of you wants to obey, the other wants to maintain control. One part wants to surrender, the other fears losing. And while this division remains, your soul does not rest. It's like having both feet in different boats. Sooner or later, you sink. Jesus reveals you something that few have the courage to accept. There is no emotional freedom without total surrender. As long as you try to balance your life between two masters, God and fear, faith and control, heaven and self-security, your anxiety will continue to grow. The rich young ruler was not rejected by Jesus. On the contrary, he was loved. But was he who decided not to follow? He was the one who thought the price was too high. And you? What have you held so tightly that prevents your peace from blossoming? Maybe your treasure isn't money. Maybe it's a toxic relationship that you're afraid to leave. A plan that God has already asked you to release. A lifestyle that looks beautiful on the outside, but is eating you up on the inside. Maybe it's the constant need for approval, or the addiction to controlling everything. Whatever it is, you know. And more than that, you feel your heart is divided, and it's killing your peace. Now close your eyes and listen to this question, as if it were being asked of you right now. Do you really want to follow me? Or do you just want the benefits of being near me? It's tough, but liberating. Because when you respond with sincerity and surrender, something breaks inside you. And that something is precisely what prevented you from living fully. Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this pain that you have been avoiding facing, because it can be the beginning of a real cure. Anxiety doesn't go away when you achieve more. It starts to give way when you finally decide what will occupy the throne of your heart. If this message spoke to you with love, comment, "Jesus, I give everything." Your comment could be the key someone needed to break that same prison today. If this message touched your heart, press the like button. Maybe your click is exactly what God will use to reach the next divided heart. But what happens next will challenge everything you believe about comparison and self-worth. Because this next truth can disarm one of the biggest hidden causes of your anxiety, comparing yourself to others. And the impact of this will surprise you. It was a simple house. But that day, everything seemed different. Jesus was there, and his presence transformed the air, the environment, the gestures. Maria, without hesitation, sits at the Master's feet, his eyes fixed on him, your soul in silence. But Martha runs from one side to the other, dishes, towels, utensils, responsibilities. She wants to please. She wants to serve. She wants everything to be perfect, not for her, but for Jesus. But somewhere between the boiling pot and the hurried footsteps, her heart starts to boil too. Martha looks at Maria and gets uncomfortable. She doesn't understand. How can your sister just stop? How can you ignore what needs to be done? Then Martha explodes. "Lord, is it okay if my sister leaves me alone to serve? Tell her to help me." Luke 10:40. But Jesus' response does not come in a critical tone. It comes with a deep touch of compassion and revelation. "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things, but one is necessary." Luke 10:41-42. And here is the moment that Jesus reveals you. Martha wasn't just overloaded with tasks. She was overwhelmed with comparison. That silent anxiety that accompanies you may have the same origin. You look around and see others sitting, smiling, posting, conquering, apparently at peace. While you run, try to keep everything going, go out of your way to be useful, accept responsibilities that no one asked you to do, and carry the blame that Jesus has already taken. But deep down, what hurts is not the weight of obligations. It's the emptiness that arises when you compare yourself to those who seem to be better. And this is where the cycle forms. The more you compare, the more you run. The more you run, the less you listen. And the less you listen, the more anxious you become. Because comparison is poison disguised as motivation. She infiltrates the mind with subtle but destructive phrases. You are not as spiritual as she is. You should be more advanced. Why haven't you gotten what he already has? And without realizing it, you exchange the voice of God for the voice of comparison. And where there is comparison, there is no rest. Jesus reveals you something revolutionary. Martha was not corrected for working. She was corrected for being anxious. And this anxiety was the result of a heart distracted from what was essential. Mary chose the good part, not because she despised the tasks, but because she recognized that Jesus' presence was worth more than any human effort. Now, think, what have you done to be seen, recognized, valued? How many times have you sacrificed just to feel like you were on the same level as someone? How many times have you stopped hearing the voice of Jesus because you were too busy comparing yourself to human voices? Perhaps this is the biggest root of your anxiety. You are trying to run a race that God didn't even sign you up for. And the path to healing begins when you stop, literally, like Mary, when you sit at the feet of Jesus and allow him to be your reference, not others. When you stop measuring your worth by results and start hearing, "You are loved simply for being here." Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to slow down. Allow yourself to sit. You don't have to compete to be loved. You don't need to prove anything for real. Jesus does not choose based on performance. He looks at the heart, and that's what he wants to achieve in you today, the anxious, divided, restless heart, because of a comparison that should never have existed. If this word spoke to your soul, comment now. Jesus, I choose to stop and listen to your voice. Your comment could be the silence another heart needs to find peace right now. And here comes the most amazing part of this journey, because there is a kind of anxiety that comes not from comparison, not from tiredness, not from guilt, but from the frustration of not understanding God's timing. And what you're about to discover will change the way you deal with life's expectations. The day dawned heavy in Bethany. The house was enveloped in silence, the smell of the funeral herb, the memory of the laughter that had now ceased, and the absence that had become unbearable. Lazarus was dead, and it had been 4 days. 4 days of tears, of seemingly unheard prayers, of hope that withered by the hour. Maria remained at home, immersed in pain. Martha, as always, went to meet Jesus, but the longing was so much, and so was the frustration. Then she said, between sobs and conviction, "Lord, if you were here, my brother would not have died." John 11:21. This phrase, which seems like just a lament, hides a cry that many still hold in their hearts. If God had acted sooner, this wouldn't have happened. It is during this wait that anxiety grows like an internal storm, because you believe, you pray, you even trust. But when the miracle does not come in its time, the heart begins to rebel in silence. Faith remains, but now accompanied by a restlessness that is difficult to explain. And it is in this space between the request and the response that anxiety finds a place to lodge. Jesus reveals you something surprising about this story. The delay was never inattention. It was intention. The word says that when Jesus learned of Lazarus's illness, he remained where he was for 2 days. John 11:6. This shocks. This is confusing. But this also teaches. Because God's time is not measured by our despair. He is not late. He is accurate. And when Jesus arrives in Bethany, Lazarus has already been in the tomb for 4 days. The body smells bad. Human logic has already decreed it is too late. But Jesus does not operate within human limits. He waits exactly for the moment when no one else can do anything, so that it is clear that only he can. Perhaps you are living the 4th day of your story today, and like Martha, you still believe, but you feel pain. Like Mary, you prefer to remain silent, trying to understand why he took so long. Perhaps you are convinced that if God had acted sooner, your loss would have been prevented, your door would have been opened, your marriage would have been saved. But Jesus reveals you. The fact that it seems that he delayed does not mean that he gave up. Sometimes anxiety that never goes away is not a sign of a lack of faith, but of faith placed in a schedule rather than a promise. You are not anxious because God is unfaithful. You are anxious because you expected him to manifest himself in one way, and he chose another. Is it hurting? Yes. Is it difficult? Very. But what if I told you that the miracle has not been denied? It is just being repositioned at the right time? Jesus approaches the tomb of Lazarus, and what happens next is more than a physical resurrection. It is an eternal declaration, "Lazarus, come out." John 11:43. With these words, he not only brings life to the body, but also hope to the hearts of those who thought it was too late. Today, he whispers to your spirit, "It's not over yet. I'm here, and I arrive exactly at the time your miracle needs to happen." Anxiety dissolves when the soul stops fighting gods timing and begins to rest in His sovereignty. Take a deep breath, close your eyes for a moment, and give to Jesus what you believed was lost. Perhaps it is still in the tomb, but it is not beyond His reach. If this message spoke to your heart, comment, "Jesus, I wait in your time." Your comment can sustain the faith of someone who is exactly on this fourth day of the soul. And if you thought that was deep, what comes now could turn your world upside down, because there is something even more subtle that prevents you from finding rest. The idea that you need to deserve what God has already given you. Get ready. What you are about to discover will change the way you see everything. But that's not all, because what you're about to discover will change the way you view your own spiritual identity, and maybe even your relationship with anxiety, because there is a silent root that eats away at the soul from within, the idea that you need to deserve God's love. And this belief, disguised as humility, has destroyed hearts in silence, feeding a type of anxiety that cannot be calmed by prayer, fasting, or human effort. Jesus reveals this to you through one of the most touching stories He told, the parable of the prodigal son. But today, let's look at it with different eyes, because it's not just about rebellion, it's about shame. And shame is an emotional poison that paralyzes the soul and chains the mind in cycles of spiritual self-sabotage. The youngest son decided to leave. He asked his father for the inheritance as if his father had already died. And it was. He lived what he wanted. He wasted everything. When the money ran out, the friends disappeared. And it was there, tending pigs, unclean, broken, alone, and hungry, that he had a thought that seems beautiful, but carries a camouflaged lie. "I will arise and go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your servants." Lucas 15:18-19. He didn't doubt his father's love, but he doubted he was still worthy of it. And here a type of anxiety arises that seems spiritual, but is toxic, that of trying to compensate for mistakes with behavior. He thought that if he were a servant, perhaps he could receive a song and a plate of food. Perhaps with a lot of effort he could redeem himself. But Jesus reveals to you, it is not repentance that returns you to the position of son. It is the love of the Father. His Father, who waited for him every day, ran to meet him. She didn't even let him finish his confession. He ordered her to wear the best clothes, new sandals, a ring on your finger, and he had a party. Because for God's Son does not return as a servant. Son returns as a son. And that breaks every attempt to prove yourself. Have you ever stopped to think that perhaps your anxiety comes precisely because, like the prodigal, you are trying to conquer something that is already yours? Trying to achieve acceptance from a God who has already accepted you? Trying to serve with excellence to hide that you still feel guilty? Trying to stay strong to hide that you still see yourself as unworthy? The root of anxiety in this case is not doubt about God's love, but doubt that you are truly loved despite your past. Maybe that's why you're tired, even though you're faithful. Maybe that's why you feel like you're never enough, even if you do everything right. Maybe that's why anxiety has become a permanent guest in your heart, because you live in fear of making mistakes and losing what, in truth, was never achieved by merit, but by grace. Jesus reveals to you today, the Father does not expect a performance. He just wants your return. As long as you try to deserve it, you will live tired. But when you allow yourself to be loved, even imperfectly, something changes inside you. The ring returns to the finger, the new clothes cover the shame, and peace, that peace that passes all understanding, begins to settle in the soul. Because anxiety arises when you think you need to maintain something that you didn't even achieve. And rest comes when you understand that grace is not a contract, it is an adoption. You are a son, and that doesn't change because you fell. It doesn't change because you walked away. It doesn't change because you had doubts. The cross is not recyclable. The price has already been paid. So, why? Are you still trying to pay back what Jesus already paid? Take a deep breath. Allow yourself to feel this truth. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the Father hugging you before you even explain. No charges, no requirement, no charge, just love. If this word touched your heart, comment, "I receive the Father's love." Your comment may be the comfort that someone who feels unworthy is waiting to return home. And now something will be revealed that few have the courage to admit, that we often call prudence, what, deep down, is incredulity. What you are about to see may shake everything you understand about trusting God. But before you think you've already understood everything, stop for a moment, because what you're about to see could change the way you interpret your rational decisions. There is a hidden anxiety, subtle, elegant, even spiritually camouflaged, that arises not from a scandalous sin, but from something much more common and much more dangerous. Unbelief dressed in prudence, yes. This anxiety that seems like too much responsibility or careful planning may, in fact, be the result of a soul that has learned to trust its own logic more than the voice of God. And to understand this in depth, we need to visit a character that almost no one preaches about, King Zedekiah, a man who seemed wise, who listened to advice, who consulted prophets, but out of fear of the opinion of others, he disobeyed God. Zedekiah ruled Judah when Babylon besieged Jerusalem. The prophet Jeremiah, clearly guided by God, gave him an instruction that defied any sense of self-preservation. If you voluntarily surrender to the king of Babylon, you will live, and the city will not be burned. But if you insist on resisting, everything will be destroyed. Jeremiah 38:17-18 paraphrase. It was a direct command, sure, but apparently irrational. Zedekiah even believed Jeremiah. In secret he said, "Let no one say anything, but I know that you speak from the Lord." But when it was time to act, he hid behind prudent arguments. What if the people turn against me? What if the Babylonians humiliate me? What if it's not really God? And so, prudence became his most pious mask to justify a decision based on fear. And here's the point. Anxiety grows when you need to control the risks of obedience to God, when you need to guarantee results before trusting the process, when you disguise your distrust with nice words like, "I must have wisdom," when deep down you have already heard what God told you to do, but you are afraid of looking foolish. Jesus reveals to you today, faith has never been about making sense. It was always about obeying even without understanding. Zedekiah disobeyed, and everything was fulfilled exactly as Jeremiah had said. The city was taken, their children were killed, his eyes were gouged out, he was taken captive. All of this could have been avoided if he had trusted. Not in your army, not your advisors, but what did God say? Could it be that this same root is fueling your anxiety? How many nights have you spent awake trying to make plans that contradict what God has already told you in prayer? How many decisions have you postponed for fear of what if? How many times have you used the name prudence to justify a paralysis that only exists because deep down you want to understand before trusting? But Jesus reveals to you, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. It's not about being irresponsible. It is about recognizing that faith is walking on invisible ground, guided by a voice that does not lie. The anxiety that arises from disbelief does not scream. It whispers, what if it doesn't work? What if it's all in your head? What if you are confusing faith with illusion? And the more you try to calm doubt with planning, the more it holds you back, because this anxiety will never be overcome by calculations. It only stops when you throw yourself into the Father's arms and say, even if I don't see, I will trust. And if this is speaking to you right now, stop, take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine Jesus saying, trust. I'm already there. If this message is touching your heart, say in the comments, I choose to trust. Your testimony could be the push someone needs to take the step of faith they've been putting off for months. And now, get ready, because we're going to expose another invisible root of anxiety, the one that grows every time you feed more on the world's bad news than on the presence of God. What you will hear next will confront how you have been nourishing your mind after facing doubt masquerading as prudence. Now we need to talk about something that you may think is harmless, but that is silently fueling your anxiety every day: what you allow into your mind. Because as simple as it may seem, what you consume in silence defines what dominates your heart out loud. And anxiety often starts not in the spirit, but in what you are hearing, seeing, and believing as truth. Jesus reveals to you that a mind malnourished by the word is fertile soil for fear. And to understand this, we need to delve into the story of King Jehoshaphat, a righteous king who loved the Lord, but one day he was surrounded by 3 enemy armies at the same time. The news came like avalanches. A great army is coming against you from beyond the sea, from Syria. They are already in Hazazon Tamar. In other words, they're already arriving. It's too late. Can you imagine the emotional impact of this information? An entire people waiting for help, and the enemy almost at the door. Jehoshaphat felt afraid. And here is the turning point. He did not deny the fear, but didn't let fear take the throne of your heart. Instead of running after human plans or panicking, the Bible says he began to seek the Lord. He called for a fast, gathered the people, and in front of the crowd he prayed with a torn heart, "Lord, we have no strength, and we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you." 2 Chronicles 20:12. This is one of the most sincere and profound prayers in the Bible, because it shows that faith is not the absence of fear. It's the choice of where you focus when fear knocks at the door. And Jehoshaphat decided, even surrounded by bad news, he would feed on the presence of God. How many times do you wake up and the first thing that rings is your cell phone? How many times do you get lost in cycles of videos, negative news, tragedies, scandals, catastrophic predictions, and then wonder why your heart is restless, heavy, suffocated? Jesus reveals to you, you were not created to carry the weight of the world. He was called to rest in the word that sustains the world. As you feed on bad news, your faith weakens, because faith comes by hearing. And what are you hearing? The voice of God, or the screams of chaos? In the story of Jehoshaphat, when the people humble themselves and turn their eyes to God, the Spirit of the Lord rises up in the midst of the congregation and declares something that echoes to this day. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed. The battle is not yours, but God's. What happens next is almost unbelievable. Jehoshaphat does not send soldiers to fight. He puts singers in front of the army, and as they sang, "Give thanks to the Lord, for his mercy endures forever," the Lord prepared ambushes. The enemies began to fight each other. Israel won without having to lift a sword. But the secret is not in military strategy. The secret is in the focus. The people who looked at the bad news now looked to the sky. The people who before trembled now loved it. The people who expected destruction experienced deliverance. And you, who have you been listening to? Is your spirit nourished or intoxicated? Jesus reveals to you, as you fill your mind with predictions of tragedy, your heart shrinks. But when you surrender to the word, your soul expands. Anxiety is inevitable when your soul's daily food is the world's disasters. But when you exchange the news for worship, the feed for devotionals, panic for fasting, something starts to change. Not outside of you, but within. It's not about ignoring the world. But remember that you were not called to live with your eyes on the battlefield, but with your eyes on the God who fights for you. Now, if this message touched your heart, and you understood that you need to change the way you have been feeding your mind, write in the comments, "I choose to feed on the Word." Your testimony could be the invitation that another lost soul needs to find peace again. But that's not all, because now, what are you about to discover? It will turn the way you search for peace upside down. In the next block, we will talk about the peace that you hope to find in your circumstances, but that, in fact, can only be born from within. After understanding how what you consume can fuel or destroy your faith, it's time to address one of the most subtle and dangerous traps that trap many anxious hearts: the illusion that peace will come when everything out there is okay. as if your soul could only breathe if the world around you was in perfect order. But Jesus reveals to you the peace you seek so much will never come from outside, because it was designed to be born inside. And to understand this truth that can free your soul today, we need to dive into a cold, dark prison, a cramped cell smelling of damp, marked by ankle chains. There were two men there, Paul and Silas. They had been unjustly arrested, beaten, and thrown into the deepest prison. Humanly speaking, they had no reason to sing. Everything was falling apart, and yet, around midnight, they began to pray and praise God in a loud voice. Now take a deep breath and think, what makes someone love instead of complaining? What makes someone sing instead of giving in to the pain? The answer is simple and supernatural. Their peace did not depend on the cell they were in, but on the sky that lived within them. This scene defies all emotional logic, because this is not about denying suffering. Paul and Silas were injured with their backs open. It wasn't cheap optimism, it was concrete faith. They knew that although everything around them was in ruins, their God remained intact. Jesus reveals to you, you are waiting for life to offer you peace, when in fact, peace has already been offered by Him. But it will only reach you when you stop looking for security and results and start trusting in presence. How many times do you say, when I get that job, I will have peace? Or, when my relationship is resolved, then my heart will calm down? And what happens? Time passes, things even get better. But soon, another concern takes its place, because you are still seeking peace like someone chasing the wind. But the peace of God cannot be reached by running. She receives herself in silence. Paul would write years later to the Philippians that this peace of God passes all understanding. Do you know what that means? That it doesn't need to make sense. She can be there even when everything seems wrong. She keeps her heart even in chaos. It invades the chest even in the storm. And here comes the wow moment. While they were singing, not after, a supernatural earthquake shook the prison. The chains broke. The doors opened, not because they tried to free themselves, but why they gave themselves completely to God in the midst of captivity. And perhaps this is the harshest and most beautiful revelation you need to hear today. Your peace doesn't come when the cell opens, but when you learn to sing with it still. Closed. Anxiety arises when you place all your hope in circumstances, but peace is born when you plant your faith in the heart of God. Jesus reveals to you, you can be surrounded by chaos and still sleep peacefully, not because everything is right outside, but because everything is right with the one who lives within you. So here's an invitation that could change everything. If this message spoke to your heart, write in the comments, I choose to sing even in prison. Your testimony can free another heart that is trapped in the same emotional cell. And remember, if this message touched your heart, hit the like button so that others can also be blessed. Your simple click could be the answer to someone's prayer today. But what you are about to discover now will turn the way you view the suffering hidden in the soul upside down. In the next block, we will reveal how anxiety can actually be the suffocated scream of an untreated soul. If the previous story showed us that true peace comes from within and does not depend on circumstances, now we will delve into an even deeper and often ignored reality. Anxiety that doesn't go away is often the echo of a wounded soul that you stopped listening to. And Jesus reveals to you, as long as you ignore what your soul is screaming, your heart will continue racing, even when everything around you is silent. It's time to rediscover a prophet who tried to run away from everything, including himself, Jonas. He received clear direction from God, go to Nineveh. But instead of obeying, Jonas chose the opposite path. He got on a ship heading for Tarshish. And even though his feet were moving, his soul was already paralyzed. Because it doesn't matter where you go. When the soul is in conflict with the calling, the body bears the weight of chaos. The Bible does not say that Jonah was rebellious, but that he was fleeing from the presence of the Lord. And that's exactly where the danger lies. It's not always blatant sin that keeps us away from God. Sometimes it's just internal silence, the refusal to deal with something that consumes us inside, and that has a cost. While Jonah slept in the ship's hold, a storm hit everyone on board. It seems ironic, but it's not. His soul was asleep, but the heavens were at war. The wounded soul that you ignore today can become the storm that drowns you tomorrow. And perhaps this explains why, even praying, even trying, even asking for help, anxiety is still there, like a shadow that won't let you go. Because it's not just about what you feel, but what you still refuse to face. And Jesus reveals to you, as long as you run away from his presence, you will also run away from the healing that your soul so desperately needs. Running away from God today can take other forms, wallowing in distractions, isolating yourself emotionally, hiding your pain even from yourself. But deep down, there is a calling you were designed for, a purpose, a truth you need to face. And until you do that, anxiety will be your silent companion. And here comes the wow moment of this story. When Jonas finally confesses his escape, when he stops running and accepts facing the storm, something powerful happens. He is thrown into the sea, but does not die. God sends a large fish to protect him, not as punishment, but as shelter. Sometimes rock bottom isn't punishment, it's starting over. It is where God treats us, confronts us, and most importantly, heals us from within. In the belly of the fish, Jonah prays, not for deliverance, but for restoration. And this is the point that changes everything. God doesn't just want to get you out of the crisis. He wants to transform who you are inside of her. Because Jesus reveals to you, soul healing happens when you stop running away and start allowing him to deal with what is hidden. What have you been running from? Of forgiveness? The truth? From an old trauma that still hurts? Of an obedience? That seems too heavy. It's time to stop. Not to run, not to disguise, but to stop and let God reach what you no longer know how to heal. So today, if this message touched parts of your soul that you have been avoiding for too long, write in the comments, Jesus, treat my soul. This may seem simple, but it could be the first step towards a liberation you've been waiting for years. And if you know someone who lives in emotional flight, share this video with that person. She may be at her limit, needing that word to keep from sinking for good. But that's not all. Because what is about to be revealed will confront a truth that many prefer to ignore. The pain of truth is less than the emptiness of illusion. And in the next block, we will see how anxiety hides behind the resistance to facing the truth that liberates. The soul only begins to be healed when the truth stops being an enemy and becomes a mirror. In the previous block, we saw how inner escape deepens anxiety. But now Jesus reveals an even deeper detail to you. Anxiety often persists, not because it lacks relief, but because it lacks truth. You pray, you cry, you even feel moments of relief. But deep down, you continue to carry wounds that have never been exposed to light because you are afraid to face them. And that's exactly where the secret lies that can break the cycle of your pain. The Samaritan woman knew what it was like to live trying not to be seen, going to get water at noon, in the worst sun just to avoid the looks and judgments, because she carried something that most carry in silence, shame. Shame on having made a mistake, shame for not being what was expected of her, ashamed of herself. And this is a prison with invisible walls but made of emotional concrete. Have you ever felt this? Jesus finds her in that exact place, at the moment she least expected it. And he could have started the conversation with judgment, but no. Jesus starts with thirst. He asks for water. This is how he acts. He enters through your pain disguised as simplicity, but he knows what's behind your anxiety. The woman tries to escape, change the subject, bring on a theological discussion, but Jesus goes deeper. He touches the wound that she never showed to anyone. Go, call your husband. And there, her world stops. Why, I can't hide it anymore. It can't be avoided anymore. You can't pretend anymore. This is where many give up, because facing the truth is painful, but it's also liberating. The woman responds with what she has. I don't have a husband. And Jesus confirms, you said it well, you had 5. It's not condemnation. It's exposure with purpose. It is the revelation that liberates. Because Jesus reveals to you, as long as you hide the truth, your soul will thirst. But when the truth comes out, the source of peace will be released within you. This woman's anxiety didn't just come from social exclusion, it came from internal denial, from the constant attempt not to face who she was and how much she needed to be healed. And if this sounds familiar, that's because maybe your anxiety may also be a reflection of something you have been avoiding, a forgiveness that you did not release, a decision that you did not make, a story that you did not close. Jesus was not there to condemn her. I was there to free her from the thirst that no relationship, no distraction, no escape has been able to resolve. And it was in that dialogue, in that deep and painful revelation, that something miraculous happened. Shame gave way to the mission. The woman who avoided looks returned to the city and became a messenger. And here is the wow of this story. The truth that scares you today is the same truth that God wants to use to transform you, because you were not created to live in hiding, but to live healed, free, with your soul at peace. So stop and think. What truth are you still avoiding facing? What inside you needs to be exposed to the light so that anxiety finally stops controlling you? If this message touched something deep inside you, say in the comments, "Jesus, I face the truth." This comment could be the beginning of a liberation you have never experienced before. It could be living water flowing within you, because Jesus reveals to you, it's not the relief that heals you, it's the truth. And if you know someone who lives at war with their own history, share this video now. Maybe this is the conversation with Jesus she never had the courage to have. But what's about to be revealed will touch a sensitive point that many prefer not to mention: the fear of losing control. And this fear, more common than you might think, could be exactly what is fueling the anxiety you so want to eliminate. After so many deep dives comes one of the most disconcerting revelations of all, and Jesus reveals it to you clearly now. Your anxiety isn't just a symptom of something wrong. It's the alarm that you've lost control trying to maintain it. And it starts with an innocent-sounding thought. I need to resolve this before everything falls apart. But this thought, disguised as responsibility, puts you in God's place. And this place is too heavy for you to carry. Saul's story is a vivid portrait of what happens when fear takes the wheel of our soul. The enemy army was already approaching. People started to desert. Samuel had promised to arrive to offer the sacrifice, but he was taking a long time. And then Saul decided to act. But he did what wasn't up to him. He offered the sacrifice that only a priest could offer. He acted as if urgency justified disobedience. And this is the root of many of our emotional breakdowns. Anxiety makes us believe that it is better to sin in a hurry than to wait in faith. Saul got ahead of himself because he believed he was losing control. But the truth is that at that moment, he had already lost. And when Samuel arrived, a few minutes later, the reality became even clearer. The problem was never time. It was the heart. Samuel looks at him and says, "You acted like a fool. Strong, isn't it? But necessary. Because when we despair of maintaining control, we lose what matters most: obedience, God's favor, the peace." Take a deep breath now, because this part is for you. How many times have you accelerated decisions for fear of waiting? How many times have you made hasty choices just to avoid the pain of waiting? You wanted security, but you ended up creating chaos. You wanted to keep everything in your hands, but today you feel like you no longer have control over anything. And this is where the word comes in as light in complete darkness. Jesus reveals to you that waiting on him is never a waste of time. It is an act of war against despair. It's a reminder that you don't have to sort out what God is still building behind the scenes. That's what anxiety is. A soul that runs ahead of God's time. A heart that tries to predict scenarios, anticipate tragedies, plan exits, while heaven just says, "Be still." But how do you do that when everything seems on the verge of falling apart? The answer lies in trusting not in time, but in those who dominate time. Saul lost the throne due to an impatient decision. And maybe you're about to give up on promises because you can't stand waiting any longer. But the Holy Spirit is telling you, do not be hasty. What is yours in the kingdom, no one can steal. But if you leave too soon, you may lose what God was about to give. You may be trying to save a relationship, keep a job, sustain an image, but all of this, without divine direction, becomes a burden, and load generates anxiety. The control you think you have is actually controlling you. But today, Jesus gives you an invitation: let go, wait, trust. And if this block spoke directly to your soul, comment sincerely, "Jesus, I let go of control." This phrase can be the most difficult step on your journey, but also the most freeing. It is your response to the call that echoes from 1 Samuel to now. Don't act out of fear, act out of faith. And if this message echoes in your heart, press the like button. This could be God's instrument to reach someone right now. Your like could free another soul trying to carry the world alone. But there is a silent poison that steals your peace. Drop by drop, day after day, what you feed in your mind. And the next block will precisely expose what few have the courage to face. Prepare your heart, because it will confront, and it will heal. Have you ever noticed how certain anxieties arise without a clear reason? As if a shadow were there, faceless, nameless, but still there, suffocating your thoughts and draining your peace? Jesus reveals to you that many times, what is distressing you is not what happens around you, but what you have allowed inside you in silence. And this truth goes straight to the heart of the story of Achan, an almost forgotten character, but whose pain echoes to this day in thousands of anxious hearts. After a resounding victory against Jericho, Israel had everything to continue in peace. But in the next battle, against a small town called Ai, God's army was defeated. No explanation, no logic. Joshua, the leader, prostrates himself before God with his heart in tatters. He asks, "Why, Lord? Why did you allow this?" And God's answer is as direct as it is painful. "There is sin hidden among you." This phrase should echo in our souls seriously, because often anxiety that doesn't go away is the symptom of a divided heart, contaminated by something that God asked us to abandon, but that we insist on keeping hidden. With Achan, it was a Babylonian robe, silver and gold that he stole and buried under the tent. With you, maybe it's resentment, hidden pornography, an unconfessed lie, a relationship you know shouldn't continue. And it's not about guilt, but about light. What is not exposed to God silently poisons our soul. Peace goes away because holiness has been replaced by concessions. The presence of God moves away because the heart has become a hiding place for what should be confessed. Achan was among the people, marching with the others, perhaps even singing praises. But inside, he knew he had broken the covenant, and this is more common than we think. How many times do you raise your hands in worship, but lay your head on the pillow with a heavy conscience? How many times do you try to convince yourself that everything is fine, but your insides scream something is wrong? And that's when Jesus reveals to you what almost no one says. Holiness and peace go together. You can even seek therapy, fast, pray every day. But as long as there is something hidden, anxiety will find gaps. The weight you feel may not just be emotional, it may be spiritual. The Bible says, "Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders." But how will God work wonders? If there is dirt hidden under the tent of your heart, make no mistake, what you hide enslaves you. What you confess, Jesus heals. And it is in this choice that many stories change direction. This is one of those moments when the Holy Spirit doesn't just talk. He confronts, because he loves you, because he doesn't want to see you sinking into fears, sleepless nights, and thoughts that don't stop. He wants to see you light, clean, free. But for that, it is necessary to unearth what was hidden. Perhaps your peace is not being destroyed by circumstances, but by silence, by omission, for the lie you told and never undone, for the hurt you harbor in secret, for the emotional dependence that you disguise as love. You want a miracle, but you still keep the cloak of Jericho under the tent. And Jesus is saying, "Son, daughter, release. I can't heal what you hide." And if this message is exposing you in a painful way, it's because she doesn't want to embarrass you, wants to free you. The anxiety that consumes your days may be linked to a life that needs to be sanctified. And the good news is, It starts now, today, with a sincere step towards the light. Comment truthfully, "Jesus, clean me completely." This confession, made with a broken heart, has more power than you realize. And if this word touched your spirit, in a profound way, hit the like button. Your like could be the sign that another anxious person is waiting to have the courage to confess. Your like could be the breath of hope that frees someone who has been carrying something hidden for years, and what comes next will touch the center of your existence. Because there's an even more devastating cause of anxiety, one that silently erodes your identity: the absence of purpose. And the next revelation will show why. Until you find the reason for your life, nothing will truly fulfill you. Have you ever stopped to think about why, even when everything seems to be in place, job, home, even emotional stability, anxiety still remains? You wake up with a strange feeling in your chest, and it's not sadness, it's not fear. It's a kind of disguised emptiness, a silent question. Is that all? Jesus reveals to you that this restlessness that won't go away could be the cry of your soul asking for meaning. Solomon had it all: wealth, wisdom, honor, pleasures, grandiose constructions. He experienced everything the world had to offer. And yet his words echo with weight and melancholy. Vanity of vanities, everything is vanity. It seems like a contradiction coming from the wisest man in history, but that's where the impact lies. The wisest man discovered that intelligence, success, and achievement do not fill the hole that only purpose can fill. What haunts so many people today is not the lack of results. It's the lack of meaning, the absence of a deep reason to wake up. Work, come back, eat, sleep, repeat. Routines without a mission generate existential anxiety, and this is the silentest form of suffering. When everything is apparently fine, but the soul screams for something greater. Have you ever felt like you are living on autopilot? Have you ever had the feeling that you are moving away from something that you don't even know exactly what it is, but you miss it? This has a name: lost purpose. And it's not that you're totally lost, but maybe you're disconnected from the reason you were created. And this disconnection makes life heavier, even when everything is fine. Solomon built palaces, wrote proverbs, led a kingdom, but his soul still searched for something eternal. At the end of his life, he writes, "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth." This phrase is more than advice. It's a cry: return to the center, return to the source, return to the purpose that only God can reveal to you. You may be in a stable but purposeless job, in a long-lasting but meaningless relationship, living but not feeling alive. And the most dangerous thing is that it doesn't explode all at once. It consumes you slowly, like an anxiety you don't even know how to name. The good news is that you no longer need to live in this existential inertia. The purpose that fulfills, that heals, and that silences anxiety, it's not something you need to invent. It's something you need to discover. And He is in Jesus. It's about aligning yourself with what He dreamed of when He thought of you. It is about returning to the origin, to the calling, to the essence of your existence. Maybe you think purpose is something huge, like becoming a missionary or preaching around the world. But purpose is not size. Purpose is obedience. It's waking up and knowing why you are here. It means living each day with a sense of mission. It is understanding that even your suffering, in the hands of God, has a why and a for what. Jesus never promised a life without struggles, but He promised a life of direction. And when you walk with direction, even pain starts to make sense. Anxiety loses strength, fear bends, because the heart aligns with the sky. And now, Jesus reveals to you the reason for your anxiety may not be the pressure of the world, but the absence of presence, the presence of purpose, of truth, of mission. You were created for something only you can fulfill. And as long as you live outside of that, your soul will remain restless. So, listen to this question seriously. Do you know why God created you? Because when you discover this, even the dark days will have light. Comment now. Jesus, reveal my purpose. This could be the beginning of a new life. from a fresh start, not based on circumstances, but on direction. And if that word touched your essence in a deep way, send this video to someone who needs to find the reason for their existence. It could be exactly what will save that person from the anxiety that is silently consuming them. Your comment could be the bridge for someone to rediscover their own value. Sharing this message can be your first act of living with purpose. If you got here, it wasn't by chance. There is something inside you that cries out for healing, for peace, for freedom. Something that got tired of living on the surface, tired of deceiving itself, of smiling on the outside and falling apart inside. And now, after diving so deeply into the truths that Jesus revealed to you, perhaps you are feeling exactly that. An emptiness disappearing, an anxiety losing space for presence. But understand, this transformation that started now needs to be sealed. Jesus doesn't just want to give you momentary relief. He wants to rebuild you. He wants to teach you how to live from the inside out. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you're starting to feel what it's like. Real freedom. Not the one that depends on what happens around you, but the one that is born when you reconnect with your origin and understand that there is an eternal purpose pulsing within you. If your heart is burning, feeling something different, don't ignore it. It is the Spirit of God calling you home. The time has come to seal all of this in prayer. Take a deep breath, close your eyes, and come with me. This prayer is for you. Lord Jesus, here we are before you, with our hearts open, torn, surrendered. We know that we often run everywhere looking for peace, but we forget that true peace is a person, and that person is you. Today, after so much accumulated pain, nights of endless anxiety, hidden tears, and forced smiles, we recognize we need you. Heal, Lord, what no one sees, calms what screams inside us. It enters the areas of our lives that even we don't have the courage to touch. Reveal your purpose, and may that purpose silence all restlessness. It renews our mind, cleanses our thoughts, restores our emotions, and strengthens our faith. We no longer want to survive, we want to live, but to live with you, for you and for you. If you prayed this prayer with me, know that you are not alone. God heard, and something started to change inside you, even if your eyes don't see it yet. If this message touched your heart, know that what you will discover in the video that is now appearing on the screen, it can change your life even more. It is the spiritual continuation of this journey. It's the missing piece in the puzzle of your release. Don't leave without seeing it, because what comes next might be exactly what you've needed for years, except no one told you. And if you felt all of this deeply, write in the comments, "I made it to the end." This will help us understand that you have been touched, and it could be exactly the sign that someone will need to read to have the strength to continue too. Your comment has power. Share this video with someone who is experiencing a storm inside. You can be the instrument that God will use to rescue someone from the brink. And if this content has blessed your life, subscribe to the channel right now. Not just as an automatic gesture, but as an act of reciprocity, a step of faith saying, I want to continue this journey with Jesus. Here, each video is a living word, each story is a key, and each new message could be the one that lifts you up when you're about to fall. Jesus reveals to you that you no longer need to walk alone. And to seal this, receive this promise, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Now go. Watch the next video on the screen, because what you're about to hear could change everything. And remember, you are loved, chosen, and called to live in peace. Not just in parts, but in full. I'll wait for you.